Welcome to the channel. Today we're continuing our series, which I have entitled Black Women Get Out and Tell. The acronym is GO. So why did I call this series Get Out and Tell? I did that because I find that as Black women, we tend to be silenced quite a bit. When things happen to us for some reason or another, the expectation is for us to sort of just shut up and take it. And I'm saying we need to stop doing that. We need to stop shutting up and taking it. And we need to let people know about these situations and the employers who are connected to the situations. Hi, my name is Colette Elizabeth, and I created this channel as a safe space with you in mind. I help Black women to embrace new seasons of their lives with purpose and joy. So I want to just get into the video. I just want to pick up where I left off from on my previous video. In the last video, I talked about how self-promotion can harm Black women when it comes to being assessed by their managers. In today's video, we're going to discuss whether it is to a Black woman's benefit or detriment to report acts of hostility, toxicity, or discrimination in the workplace to human resources or HR. I had been watching a couple of videos on Dr. Kimani's channel. Dr. Kimani is a licensed psychologist, and she talks about toxicity or leaving toxic workplaces. In several of her videos, she had a guest on there by the name of Anne Marie Archer. And Anne Marie Archer she calls herself the Anti-HR HR Lady. She's an attorney and she is currently an HR consultant for employees. And she helps Black women to leave toxic work environments with their money. Okay. So I like to listen to Miss Archer because she is very, very, very knowledgeable about the going ons of HR because she used to work in HR. So she already knows what's going on. And in two videos that I will reference, and I will link those below in the description box, they are both on Dr. Kimani's channel. Dr. Kimani's channel is called Lifting as We Climb Consulting Services. And the first video is called First Steps to Leaving Your Toxic Job for Black Women in Hostile Work Environments. And the other video that I'm going to reference is called Next Steps with the same title. And again, I'll link both of those in the description box below. But in those videos, Dr. Kimani is interviewing Anne Marie Archer. And I, again, would recommend that you check those videos out because what they're talking about is HR and how HR handles complaints from Black women. The other thing that she talks about is, whether or not Black women should document and report information to HR. Now, I am talking about it because I personally have experience reporting things to HR. I've experienced where I reported information, I had detailed documentation, I had emails, I had everything, and HR did not do anything for me. In fact, it appeared to me that HR was taking the information that I was providing them and flipping it towards me, flipping it in such a way that it appeared that I was the problem. Now, I didn't know this, but this is a common practice of human resources. Like Anne Marie Archer says, human resources is there to protect the company, or in the case where I worked, it was a government agency, so the organization. And in some cases, it doesn't even matter what that manager has done. Many times, HR, they're completely aware about the misbehavior of some of their managers and supervisors. In particular, the manager that was harassing me, I know for a fact that many employees reported her. They had gone to the union because, again, I work for a government agency. They told me they went to the union. Some of the individuals in LR, I had spoke to them, that's labor relations. They said that yes, complaints were filed and received. And this person's administrator did not do anything. The administrator was who she reported to. I'll say this. I also know as a manager is that when actions are taken against somebody because of something that they did, maybe it's a performance issue or what have you, we cannot share with the person who maybe brought a complaint or maybe there was something that happened in the workplace. We can't share it with the other party. So it is possible that actions were taken against the manager who harassed me and I'm just unaware of it. Of course, I am saying that nothing happened because she was promoted several times, even though she received all these complaints. That's why I'm saying that. The other thing I'm going to say is for me, in my situation, I know that I reported and documented everything in detail. And I also know that one of the superiors to this particular manager, who was a Black woman, point blank told me she's not going to do anything because that's not her job, that she hired somebody else to take care of that, and that she would do some coaching for to this manager who was harassing me. What I found very interesting about this Black manager is when it came to Black women, she was always ready to manage us, okay? Basically put us in our place. But when it came to non-Black people who maybe were misbehaving or weren't performing the way that they should be performing, she was always ready to mentor them. I know for a fact that when I had gone to her about situations that involved employees of another race, they were not Black, she would want to offer strategies on how to do A or how to do B or how to do C. But when I would go to her about a Black employee or a Black manager, her go to was to write the person up. This is what I personally observed from this person, and I personally lived this with this person. Okay. So I know that that happened. And I just want to be real clear here. I am not saying that all Black managers do this. I would never say this. And I don't even think that. But I can tell you that that happened. I experienced it. I know other people who have experienced it, and I just want to talk about it. So, the premise of this video was to talk about what do you do as a Black woman? Is it safe for us to go to human resources? And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know. It depends. I know for me, when I've gone more than once, more than twice, more than three times, that the results were not such that I was satisfied. In fact, in my particular case, I had to go to state legislators twice, twice. And I have those documentation, those receipts, as the young people say. I have them still. I had to reach out to my state legislator and say, hey, I work for this agency. I am being harassed. And here's the paperwork of what I've tried to do to resolve the issue, but it has not helped the issue. It has made it worse. The first time I did it, at that point, the same person, the Black woman who I had been going to over and over and over again, at this point, everybody's listening now because when I notified the legislator, I included all of these folks and said, this person reports to this person. I was referring to the person who was bullying me, and her boss reports to this person, and her boss reports to this person. And I provided their titles. All of a sudden, I get a call and everybody wants to talk. That was the first time. Okay. I was able to escape the bullying situation for a little while. I was placed on some special projects for a 2-year period of time. Now, what I find interesting is that the agency that I work for, the government agency I work for, was more willing to put me on a special project, which I enjoyed, by the way, than to deal with the hostile working environment, even though I have proof. They didn't want to look at it because what do? They see you as the problem sometimes. That's why when you say, or people ask me, Colette, should I go to HR? I have to say it depends. I think you should always go because I think that you should know the policies and the procedures that are outlined in your employee handbook, which you should have gotten the first day that you were employed. And if you had been with a company for 20, 30 years, many people, they haven't looked at that. I would encourage you to look at your employee handbook before going to HR, if you can, and understand what procedures are in place for reporting incidents of harassment, bullying, discriminatory behavior. Find out what those are. Familiarize yourself with the process and the procedures and the steps that the organization has in place for us as employees. Even if you're a manager and you're experiencing some type of behavior like this, you are still an employee. What steps are in place? What reporting calls does that organization or that company have in place to address these issues? Just make sure that you're aware, because information is very helpful, because when you have this information, you can see plainly if the organization is adhering to their own policies, if the organization is following their own procedures. In my case, they did not, and I was real clear about that. I pointed it out a number of times. Hey, this is the normal policy and this is the procedure, but this is what you did. And unfortunately for me, that didn't help me. Okay. That didn't help me. So I just want to be real honest with you, right? Because what's going to happen when you go to human resources is one of maybe three things. One, human resources will do what they're supposed to do. They will investigate the situation and be fair about it and find out what is going on. Is what is being alleged really, really occurring? Is this a credible accusation? Has there been an established history of said supervisor or said manager or said employee exhibiting this type of behavior before in the form of prior complaints? If so, are the complaints similar? So that's what HR would do if they are doing their job. And that's not saying that they either agree or disagree with your complaint. It means that they are doing what they're hired to do, which is their job. But the other thing I want to point out is HR is also there to protect that organization. So what they are doing is, one, they may look into the incident, but then they may also be looking at ways to reduce the risk to the employer or the organization, to reduce the risk of what could happen if these allegations turned out to be true. And unfortunately, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, that may not bode well for the employee. The second thing that HR may do is to totally ignore the complaint. And what I mean by that, that happened to me. Okay, it was ignored. I had a call with human resources in the presence of another manager. So sometimes what they'll do, HR, is they will sort of double team you. It'll be an HR manager and it'll be a manager maybe from your office or your unit. And it's a power dynamic. And it's really not a good power dynamic, because one of the things that we are trained to do when things are happening or an employee has a complaint or concern is not to have an imbalance of power, meaning that when I have an employee that has a concern, I'm in what management. I'm not going to have another manager there and the employee is by his or herself, right? What you do is you want to make sure the employee is aware, hey, you can bring somebody with you. Sometimes it's a union member, maybe it's another impartial employee. But in my case, they had another manager, which that's not even following normal policies and practices, right? It just isn't. And I knew this. I knew this. So that's number two. They took the complaint, and that complaint I gave them, it was like, I want to say it was in July of 20, let's see, July 2021. We're in what, February 2023. I haven't heard from them people. I resigned via retirement effective December 2021. Okay. So from July 2021 to December 2021, I never heard back from HR. And I had sent them tons of emails as per their request, never heard back from them to this day. To this day, never heard back from them. So that's number two, inaction. And I'm saying inaction because at the very least, if an investigation had happened or if the concern was being looked at, seems like I would have got an email saying, hey, we're looking at your concern. Never got anything from those people. And I have all my emails to this day, even though I retired. I have the hard copies. The third thing that could happen is you can get retaliated against. I've had that happen as well, and I've seen it happen to other people. What happens is you talk to the human resources individuals, or sometimes it's not even at the human resources level. Maybe it's at the local level and you're dealing with local management. This is where my situation occurred. And you elevate a concern about some behavior that's disturbing for you. Okay. It's impacting your ability to perform your job because maybe it's creating a hostile work environment. Maybe it's creating a toxic work environment. Maybe it's discriminatory in nature and your ability to perform your job is being impacted. So, what could happen and what has happened to me in the past, same employer, and I've seen it happen to other people, is you report that behavior to the manager of the person who is harassing you. In my case, I reported it to the administrator. I also reported it to division chief, and I was retaliated against, okay, by the manager who was harassing me. There was a period of time where I was locked out of meetings. Management meetings were given and I would be locked out. All the other managers on the, I'll say, upper management team would be included in these meetings and I would not know about them. The way I would find out about them is I happened to walk by the manager's office and I would see these folks in a meeting and I'm the only person who is not in a meeting. And guess what? I'm the only Black person at that level not in the meeting. Bring it up to the manager more than once. Hey, maybe I missed a memo. Maybe I missed a meeting invite. Did that happen? No response. And of course, you know me, I got all my documentation. I have everything, right? Happens once, it's an accident. Happens twice, it's an oversight. Happens three times, as somebody said, it's a pattern. And that's what happened. Past situations where my staff were experiencing the impact of me being bullied and they even noticed it. So it was not something that was hidden. And so I had to go to the legislators more than once. So the second time I went to the legislators was because um, I had come back from my second 2-year assignment. Yes, I had two. So when I returned from the first 2-year assignment, I came back to another manager. The administrator had retired by this time. And so I had another manager. She resumed her bullying. She resumed her micromanagement of me. I documented this, of course, and I elevated it, and nothing happened. I remember one of the other managers who I managed asked me, why is she doing this to you? And I couldn't answer. I mean, I could have, but I didn't want to, right? Because what could they do? Why would I bring it to somebody who can't help the problem? But the reason why I bring it up is because when bullying occurs or when there is a hostile work environment in place, it doesn't just impact the target, which I was the target, it impacts all of the people around me, my direct reports, my indirect reports, my peers, because the behavior is not something that is being hidden, right? So the second time that I had to go to the legislator, of course, at that point, again, then I get an email acknowledging my concerns, even though I had sent several emails a number of times saying this is what's happening, giving examples, giving dates, forwarding copies of emails, forwarding copies of documents. Never really received a response to any of it until I had gone to the legislator. So you say, Colette, why are you saying all this? Then why are you still saying to document? I say to document because even though HR may not resolve your concern, and like they didn't resolve mine, they didn't do anything to my knowledge. They didn't even have the decency to respond to me and even say that they were looking into it. I didn't get any of that. To this day, I don't know what the outcome was. And as a manager, I know that if some action was taken against the manager that was harassing me, I know that they can't tell me that. I get that. Well, one of the things they can tell me is that your concerns are being looked into. That really really was not the case. Even after I had sent lots and lots of documentation, you still want to do the documentation. Why? Because that documentation that I did, it empowered me. I felt empowered. It empowered me and it made me feel as if it put me on an equal playing field. Even though the harassment continued, even though the manager that I was bringing the complaints about continued her behavior, I felt assured that I had the documentation that I needed if I needed to take this to the next step and go legally. I felt reassured. Now, what happened? That's going to be in another video. Okay. But you want to document. And what do you want to document? You always want to document the date, the time, any witnesses, what happened, who said what, where were you? You want to document all of those things and you want to document them someplace that is not. One of the things that you could do if you're at work and you have an email, maybe the incident was a rude email or a rude response, print the email, print it. Or if it's something that you feel uncomfortable printing at work, you can forward the email. If your work email allows you to send things outside, forward it to yourself at home. You can create a special account for yourself. If your name is Susie, you can create an account that says Susie documentation@gmail.com and just start sending your documentation to your personal email address and open that stuff and print it when you get home. That's one of the things you can do. The other thing you can do is I mentioned Anne-Marie Archer before. She has a, I think it's a documentation workbook that shows you how to document. And I will put that link to her documentation below so that you can get that. Documentation, I feel, does a couple of things. One, of course, it's a record of what happens, and you want to do the documentation when whatever incident occurred. You don't want to wait if you can. Sometimes you might have to wait till you get home, maybe you have to wait till you get out in the car, what have you. But you want to do it when it's fresh. That's number one. The other thing that documentation does is it helps to get the stuff out of your head and onto a piece of paper or a notebook, or if you type it into something, it just helps to free up some space. I encourage you, in addition to documenting, to in something, a journal or whatever, write how you feel. Make that separate. Have a documentation journal, maybe you can call it that. I don't know. Something that's separate than you talking about the facts of what happened. Write about how you feel. That's very, very important because there will need to be some healing to take place once you decide to move on, whether it's to leave that organization, company, or to leave the situation alone. You're going to need some kind of way to heal from the situation. One thing I didn't mention, and I want to bring it up briefly here, is sometimes when you are documenting and reporting, sometimes you may not benefit from that. And I have to just be honest with you about that. You may not be the benefactor of it. It may be another Black woman who may be the benefactor of the steps you've laid down as it relates to documenting. The other thing that Anne Marie Archer says to do is to let folks know about it. I believe in that. So that's the tell part of this. You don't just leave and not say anything to anybody. I remember when I worked in retail, one of the things we learned is that people, when they say that the customer service was good or they had a good experience, they may tell one person. But if they had a bad experience, they tell a minimum of 7 people, or a minimum of 7 people find out. I am now in the point of my life, I am like, listen, tell what happened to you. Back in the day, we used to have something, the Black community, we had something that was called the Green Book for short. had a longer name. But the Green Book was a book that started being published in 1936 by a Black man. I believe he was a mail carrier. And it started in 1936 and it stopped in 1966. But basically, what the Green Book did is it listed the different places where African Americans could stay in a hotel or find something to eat. It kept us safe because during that time, during the Jim Crow era and during segregation, there was a lot of places when we traveled as Black people, we could not eat in the restaurant. We could not sleep in the hotels. What the Green Book did for us, it listed safe places where we could stay, where we could eat, where we could use the restroom. Okay. So to me, when you tell you're serving as a new type of Green Book to other Black women about employers, hey, you want to stay away from them. Now, some people are not going to listen because they don't think that it could happen to them, and it may not. I hope it don't, really. But I think, and I agree with Anne Marie Archer when she says we need to leave reviews about these employers and name them out on Glassdoor, on Indeed, on Inside Voices, which is a place for people of color. And we need to say, this employer did this, and name them out. Now, you need to be telling the truth. You shouldn't be lying. Let's be honest. If they did it, they did it. Okay. And so I agree. I believe get out and tell. Now, should you go to HR? I think that you should go to HR, but I also want you to manage your expectations about what's going to happen when you do go to HR. Again, one of three things are going to happen. One, HR is going to do their job, investigate the situation, look into it, and make a factual based determination about what happened and what to do next. Keep in mind, even when they do that, if HR takes action against the supervisor, they cannot tell you that they took action against the supervisor or manager. They can't do that. But they can tell you that they are looking into your concerns or that they looked into your concerns. That's number one. Number two is, which they do a lot, they may not do anything. I just want you to be prepared. And I want to keep it 100 and keep it real. They may not do a doggone thing about it. So be prepared for that. So you may have to go further. For me, as I mentioned, I had to go to the state legislators. Okay. And two or three, excuse me, they may retaliate against you. Because what can happen is HR can take your information. I remember on the interview that I did with HR, I made a statement about something. And I can't remember. Oh, I know what it was. I made a statement about something about my tone, the tone of my voice. Okay. I said something about the tone of my voice in the interview. And so the person in HR said, oh, do people say that about you all the time? Do people say you speak like this all the time? And at that point, I knew, oh, yeah, I see what she's doing. You're trying to set me up for the angry Black woman trope. And I already know about that trope. We get that. It's a trope that was created from chattel slavery, and we already know about it. We know what it's all about. It is a way to silence Black women. It is a way to denigrate their character, and it is a way to put you in your place. Because most of us, many of us, we do not want to be seen as the angry Black woman. So that trope is put out there as a way to stop us in our tracks. We don't want to be seen as a stereotype. Nobody wants to be seen as a stereotype. So I will put that Harvard Business Review article, a link to it, in the description box below. It talks about the angry Black woman trope that's used in the workplace. It's used as a way to just say Black women are angry because that's just their personality, versus us being angry because we have a right to be angry. there's some stuff that happened to us. So I'm responding like other people respond when something that is not cool happens to them. For other people, it's seen as, oh, a justified type of anger, right? But for Black women, it's seen as an attitude problem or a personality problem. It's seen as something that's internal, an internal part of who we are, as a as opposed to how it is viewed when other people who are not Black experience some of the same challenges and express themselves the same way. They're seen as, oh, well, it's because this happened to Chani or this happened to Sally. Whereas if it's Tamika, Tamika has an attitude, or Tamika is just rude, or Tamika is very aggressive or angry. Can't even tell you how many times I was described as angry. And by the time I had been harassed, hell, I was angry. So some of it became a self-fulfilling prophecy because I had gotten upset by the way that I was being treated. So anyway, going to HR is a gamble. You got to decide, is it worth it? I think you should do it. Going to HR as a Black woman with your concerns, it's a gamble. It may help, it may hurt. We have to decide which one we want to live with and which one we want to deal with. At the end of the day, this is about us and what we want to handle. If you enjoyed this video, which was pretty tough, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy it, give it a thumbs down. If you want to get more content like this, remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you are notified when I upload new videos. Again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. And you know what? I just want you to know you got this, right? And even if you don't have it, you got choices. Remember that. You have choices. And this is a great time to look into your choices. Make your plan, work for you, and do what you need to do. Talk soon.